Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bobble Pod. On this episode, we're going to be talking about how you can be using branded merchandise to support your digital marketing efforts with our guest, James Biggin. But before I start, as always, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. If you're listening on, Spotify or Apple Podcasts, if you're on YouTube, as always, hello YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell notification. Our episodes come out every Tuesday. So today's episode, using branding merchandise to support your digital marketing. And for this episode, I'd like to introduce James Biggin, who is the MD of Steel City Branded Merchandise. Welcome, James.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me, Manny.
So before we begin, I always ask to every guest, tell us, spend a couple of 2-3 minutes just explaining to the audience who you are and how you got your career to the journey of now being MD of Steel City.
So I started out not in this industry. So from university, I did something completely different. It was a family business. It was owned by my dad, started by my father back in 1980, just doing branded merchandise. It started out as Sheffield-based items, Sheffield-made items. And very quickly, they realised that that wasn't going to be sustainable and that wasn't going to be what the customers would demand. So they started to expand product range and sourcing capabilities, and that side of the industry started to explode, really.
Yeah.
I came into the business in the early 2000s to replace the other business director, who was poorly, who was probably going to have to retire early. And then it was the journey from there, really, which was to ultimately learn about the company, try and become the salesperson that they needed to fill the gap, and to try and expand the business from there. And I took over, I suppose, full ownership and managing directorship in just as the recession started, actually.
2008, 9, 10.
So it was just about then. My dad retired about 3.5 minutes before the crash, so I think he timed that pretty well. Don't think he planned that, but he looked out there. And then, I guess ever since I've tried to put my stamp on it, tried to make the company into what I felt it should always be and how we should be sort of performing and conducting the way we do things, and I suppose the passionate side of what we do, really. So we've had a lot of bumps in the road. It's the roller coaster hasn't been a smooth one. So there's been some drops as well as some massive highs. So
how does that kind of compare? Because it's always good having a guest on the podcast, because you get guests from different backgrounds in different industries and different sectors. So yours is more physical, it's like us in a way where it's a cost, but is it a necessary cost? And I'd say digital marketing is definitely a necessary cost. Whereas I'd probably assume, and this is an assumption, that most business owners would say that, restocking our pens and elements is a necessary cost, especially when you consider the last 3 years with the COVID lockdown, the recession style economy we're in right now. So how are you guys facing the challenges right now?
So COVID obviously hit us badly. Every economic downturn does hit us first. It's bound to, because like you say, people will chop certain costs off. However, what we saw, I suppose, within the COVID was that there was a lot of a move away from what we'd seen just prior to that, which was a move towards the eco side of things and the sustainability of products, which could be used within marketing. And it was back to single use. So lots of single use items were required, demanded, and effectively brought into that new world, really. I think, the marketing side and people working from home, that made people think differently about how they were going to change their marketing spend. But what you were starting to see emerge out of that second year was that people were starting to send packs out, boxes, gift packs, introduction packs. So where they couldn't go and visit their clients, and where they weren't going up and down the country, and where that world changed in terms of traveling to go and meet clients, they were sending gifts out and thank you packs and welcome packs. That's all branded. The impact of those items landing either at somebody's house, if they were able to do that because they were working from home and they'd obviously made the right checks. But the boxing and unboxing side absolutely transformed. That's staying. That is not going away. We're getting regularly, every few days, we're getting people wanting to look at welcome packs or staff gifts that are going to be mailed out. And now, obviously, we're seeing a real surge in the last 2 years. That the branded merchandise side just kicked back off because people were going out, people were going to events again, people were exhibiting again. It exploded.
Yeah, and we've mentioned this a few times on our podcast. We're back with our marketing showcase events, and actually all our merch on our stand comes from Steel City, which is where the relationship between me and James comes from. So if you do need merch and you are doing an exhibition, not to put a plug in, but James is your man. So we want to talk about, how to use branded merchandise to support your digital marketing efforts. So why should companies have branded merchandise in the first place? Is it, necessary? What are the benefits?
So I think if a company's got something to achieve within their marketing, then they're going to look at a range of tactics. They're going to assess those tactics and they're going to consider which ones are going to fit in. Maybe multiple ones, maybe all of them, maybe just a couple. Merchandise is only just one of those tactics, in the same way that they're going to consider SEO. There's going to be different levels of spend. There's going to be different rationale behind it. It revolves around who they're wanting to target. And so merchandise only fits into that. Merchandise isn't better necessarily. It isn't worse. It isn't more expensive. It's probably got the best cost per impression that you could probably put into £1 of marketing spend. Because if you're going to consider giving somebody something that they're going to use every day, or they're going to see every day, that's got your contact details on, it's got your phone number on, or got a website or a call to action, that stays with that person for months or years. And they're going to potentially see that and have that reconnection with the brand recall, or they're going to want you at that particular moment when they need your product or service.
So give us an example of a client you have or a brand that you've seen out there that does merchandise well.
Well, I'm bound to say that everybody does it well that we deal with. Clearly, you guys stand out with what you've done. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. Obviously, I'm on your podcast. I should say that.
Hey.
But I think what you've done is you've used what is part of your business's culture and values and what you do day to day. And you've aligned products, and you'll do this with every other aspect of your marketing as well, whether it's the podcast, whether it's your social. You've used products and chosen those products based on what you believe in, what you would probably want to use, and what you would give out to let people then use that's got your name on it.
Yeah, so just give an example. Like if you turn up to one of our showcase events, where it's all around the UK, we have stuff like wireless phone chargers that you can plug in and use on your desktop. We have multiple chargers, cables with a USB plug-in for iPhone, USB. We have phone holders, branded. We have cloths for screens and glasses, basically for people working. It's very focused around, we understand most of our clients and prospects, marketing managers, directors spend a lot of time on their desk. And it's nice to go and pick up something that you can keep on your desk. Again, there's a method to the madness because our logos on it all, our contact details are on it all. So if a marketing manager comes to the showcase, has a great conversation with us, takes some merchandise, starts using it, then they're on a call and they have a conversation about digital marketing. Again, we're talking about a lot of hypotheticals here. The idea is that, the brand is there front of mind, front of view constantly. And you've got to assume that they do use it and they do have it. But that's where, and we'll get into this shortly, is how to integrate that with digital marketing with the QR code to request an audit and stuff like that, website address and phone numbers and stuff like that, where you can start tracking elements from it. So brings me on to the next question is, how does digital marketing integrate with branded merch? What is like best practice or any key tips you would give to listeners? Is there a strategy behind it, for example?
I think what you were saying earlier on, it's about sometimes joining up the dots. So you're exactly right that you're giving people things that you want them to use. You are aligning it to technology. Your clients are technology based, or you'd hope that they have a love of or a need to bring technology into their working day. In terms of the best practice and what you can do, I think probably there's things that you could try and align yourself with. So if a company is having a massive drive on eco, if they're having the net zero sort of drive and they're wanting to reduce their impact, but they still know that they have to do the marketing, and obviously they're going to use tactics that are as low impact on the environment as possible. If they were to choose products that have that eco angle or that have been considered and thought out and checked with a company like ourselves about the credentials, that's a social media post right there. So just that on its own can provide enough of a piece that the company can then say, we've put that out there. We've put it out there so that people can't then question us. So if they question us about what we're doing, we can point them to that content and we can say, that's what we've chosen to do. And we've done as much as we can on that point. I think what it has to be is it has to fit, everything has to fit in with the aims of the business as well. And so if they're going to want to boost social media activity and they want to boost engagement on social media, then branded merchandise is perfect for that, just in the same way that a voucher would be, or a token or a credit or whatever. But actually, if that is the challenge and if that is the target of boosting engagement or gaining more followers, it wouldn't be necessarily for everybody, probably not for us. We don't just want followers, but some brands do. Then merchandise can do that. The engagement can follow through with that to what we probably would want to achieve, which is if we're going to give things to people to take away with them and use, we can ask them to post on social. We can ask them to take a photo at that event with that item, or we can ask if they feel it's of value, could they share their story about how they find it useful within their day-to-day. You're getting a promotion of your business, but you're getting the product being promoted at the same time. So the feel-good factor is massive within using branded merchandise within digital. You mentioned QR codes. I was going to bring that up because the QR codes obviously re-exploded in COVID again. We're all used to them in everyday shape or form, to see them, to bring up a menu at a restaurant or a bar, or logging in and finding the details that we need to find. But equally, the test and measure approach could be quite valuable by placing those QR codes onto the items that you give out. If they hit a certain landing page that no one else can find, if it's about driving traffic to one of your social media platforms or all of your social media platforms, then the merchandise can be specifically used to gain absolute metrics on how valuable it is. And even if it's 5, 10, 15%, there's no real other way of gauging things from many of those other tactics apart from doing that.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can integrate it and measure it as well. And in the sense that, like you just said, if you're a B2B, customer and you're listening to this, you're a B2B business owner and you're sending stuff out through direct mail to engage with people, then you want that QR code, you want that website URL, because then you can track how many people complete a form on a hidden page, well, non-public page, so it's visible, but it's not public. And you can see how many, quotes come through that day. So as simple as like a leaflet when we have at the showcase events has the QR code on the back for them to request a free digital strategy audit, and we track that separately to see how many leaflets we've given out, how many actual strategy forms are completed, even though we request that information whilst they're there at the time. And even with everything else, the QR code, the elements is to reinforce the brand further down the line, and it can be tracked. So I agree with the one on the social media element, because you could do competitions and elements like that, or you could send out, so let's say branded merch isn't just for the listeners. It isn't just for like B2B or something like that. You can do it as an e-commerce client. You could send out branded merch to your top customers, existing customers. And remember, what I talk about is don't neglect your existing valuable customers, especially in a difficult economic time. Send something out to them to say thank you for continuously repeating or rebuying from our website or from us. Send them out a t-shirt or something, and don't forget to tag us and hashtag us. Tell us why you're our number one customer on social media, and you will enter a competition and you'll get £500 worth of free spend on the website. That's just a standard simple, but that's taking your branded merch strategy to your existing customers, potential new customers, and getting them to then see the engagement. Well, how did that come? How did that do? How many of them then went on and rebought, from the website? How many of them then actually went on and tagged the brand? How many social mentions do we get? As a result of that, their friends are going to see that they got merch from that client or brand and they're like, oh, I want one, and they might go on the website and visit it, what they're doing, and they might end up on buying. So if you can drive quality traffic to your website and to your page, whether you're e-commerce or B2B, you can do that. And it's the same with the existing clients of your B2B. If you have clients on retainers like we do, we always send stuff out around Christmas and Easter where we can, like little Easter hampers or Christmas hampers. We go above and beyond if, let's say, one of our clients, is expecting, and we find out, we get the details and we send a little hamper as a congratulations. Or if they're getting married, we'll send something, or any kind of occasion they're celebrating, we'll use that as an element because it's an existing customer. But they're likely to come back and thank us and less likely to leave us because of the relationship we built. So it works well from a B2B element. We are probably going to consider trying this as a brand probably next year, is doing more B2B direct, selling with like a specific branded merch and call to action, whether it's a handwritten letter or something like that, personalize it a lot more and see what uplift that has. But we'll be able to track it because the call to action, once they receive it, will lead them to either tagging us on social media or contacting us. And if that happens and it leads to a client, there's your return on investment, which is what we all care about. So,
and everyone likes thank you.
Yeah,
everyone likes being thanked for the business or for the inquiry or for visiting the stand, or that nothing can be underestimated about the power of a thank you or the power of a message coming across. Definitely. I mean, we've got some examples of. I remember saying to somebody when they were talking to me about going on site when they were a recruitment firm and they were wanting to go onto the construction site and speak to the lads on site, and this is going back years. And he said, we buy 12 of them a bacon butty. And I said, well, that's great. And that's really good spend. I mean, they must love you for that. I said, but if you gave 12 beanie hats out, it's the same cost. And how long would they keep that beanie hat? How long would they wear it for, especially in the winter? How many times would it be seen? And he just stayed silent. And he just stayed quiet. And he had no response to me whatsoever. And then I suppose the other story that's just come to mind with what you were just saying is the staff retention and the recruitment side for branded merchandise should never, ever, ever be underestimated. We had one client that bought a huge volume of travel mugs because they wanted to get rid of the single throwaway cups. And they said there's additional rationale behind us doing it, not only to save the money and to cut down on waste. We want our staff to be carrying our logo around with them when they're going down to the football on the Sunday, when they're going to watch their kids in the park, because our company will be seen as a good recruiter. It will be seen positively by those friends and family of those people around. And that wasn't me. That stuck with me because that was a client telling me why they were buying, which was quite powerful.
Yeah, I think one of the things we ordered from you recently was the key rings with the trolley coins.
Yeah.
Honestly, you don't realize how many people see it and say, oh, give us a trolley coin. And I keep some in my car as a spare or on me. And I just give them out and they love it. Because every time they go to the supermarket, instead of having to try and find a quid or a trolley coin, it's there attached to the keyring with Bobble Digital on board. But yeah, I try to make everybody I know a walking billboard for Bobble Digital. Here's an example of how it works. So we had a hoodie. I went on a stag do with my mate to Istanbul, Turkey back in May. And I'm sat at the back. We're all sat separately. And I'm wearing, because it wasn't great weather, because it was early May. And despite it being spring, we never got the weather. So welcome to British weather. I'm there in my Bobble hoodie. So I'm in my jeans, I'm in my beanie. I've got my white Bobble hoodie with the blue logo on. And the guy, I'm sitting on the aisle seat, and the guy next to the window, the two of them says, is Bobble Digital your company? Are you an employee? And I went, sorry, what do you mean? And then I realized I was wearing the hoodie because I'm so used to wearing it now. And he goes, oh, we got in contact to you a while back. And I was like, oh, what is it that you do? Bed company. Now, I realized we couldn't work with them at the time because we were working with another bed company, but then got bought out and then had their own agency. So that relationship came to an end. Not our fault, but we did well enough to help them to get acquired. And I was like, well, at that time we were working with so-and-so. He goes, yeah, I know. And that's why I want to work with you. But I said it would have been a conflict of interest. But this is the situation. As you know, they've been bought out and we're happy to, work with you. Come back, have a laugh, get his details on the plane, have a conversation. It's a 4-hour flight. We're having a bit of conversation. Come back, we meet up, and they're now a client.
That is insane.
They're now a client. So I said to me, from going on a flight to your stag to now it's a client, and now we've got the second part of the business coming through with the once the website's launched. So you don't realize, and that's perfect example there, where it's like you want people wearing your brand and going out there and talking about it. It's, branded merch helps. I mean, that's not going to happen all the time, but if you see me out and about, more often than not, even in my personal time, I'm wearing a Bobble t-shirt, or I'm wearing a Bobble hoodie, even when I go to my local temple.
And I think that's really interesting, because I think when you're a B2B brand, you almost have that fear factor of wearing your own brand or showing your own brand off, or staff will probably use items you give to them. So if you give them an umbrella, or they will use it if it's raining.
If they're like wearing a t-shirt and it's road rage and you're the person causing the road rage and they see your hoodie, it doesn't work in that.
I think you've got to be aware of your surroundings and what you're doing at the time.
Careful who you flip off when you're wearing company merchandise.
Yeah, you've got to be respected. Yeah, the values and culture piece comes back in there. Yeah, absolutely.
So any tips and advice you want to share with the audience when it comes to branded merch?
So I think what I would probably say to people is, if you're going to either embark on it or you're going to look into it in more detail than you have before, is to probably appraise what you've done. Consider what you've done before and how it's worked, and whether you think you've done enough.
Just to come in, Kevin, what if they haven't done it before? What if this is their first time coming into branded merch?
If they haven't done it before and they feel as though they want to use it within the tactic, they've sussed it out within their plans, within their target audience, with what they're trying to achieve, and it is something they're teetering with, but that conversation should start with them not being pushed down one avenue, or to go hard at it, to go too deep and to spend too much. I would probably always say to somebody, if they're unsure, let's test it out with lower volumes. It will cost a little bit more in those initial setups. It just will. But it's way better to have a smaller volume that goes down really well, that you can repeat, rather than sitting there with boxes in a store cupboard that aren't getting used, that you've not bought into, that the MD keeps passing and going, why have we got that? And suddenly you're starting to see it as a negative. It should be a positive. The unboxing should feel good. You have chosen the product, worked with the company to try and put that together and pull it together. Sometimes things go wrong and there's little hiccups on the way, but you should feel positive about that.
Test the waters, essentially.
Yeah, test it. And I would probably say, use it within what you're trying to achieve. So if you're going to start going to an event and you're going to exhibit, then I would probably say those are absolute classics. If you're going to send out welcome packs and send out thank you packs, those are classics as well. Then try and increase and get the engagement side of things. Use it yourself. Be proud of what you've got and start to use it, and get a buzz and giddy about it. Because if you can't be, it just won't work. And I probably would say keep it real. So it must be part of what you want it to be, and it must form part of your business and the culture that you're doing. It should be exciting for everyone in a marketing and business sense.
So the last question I always say is, what is one thing you would tell our listeners to implement? What's one thing they should take away from this podcast?
So I think it would be to look into whether things have definitely hit the mark that you've done before. If you're carrying on doing things the way you've always done them, you'll just carry on unless you're wanting to challenge that norm. And that would be the same if you were doing Instagram, but you should be on LinkedIn. So, I'm focusing on merchandise, but it would be the same within any range of the tactics that you employ within your marketing. So I'd probably say challenge it with staff, challenge it with customers, ask the questions, what's gone down well, what hasn't gone down well, what would they like, what have they seen your competitors doing and what they've done really well. In the same way that you can look at people's social media and decide what they're doing well on that shouldn't be different with any other tactic, and merchandise should be the same. So I'd probably challenge that and see whether it needs to change. If it doesn't and you're really happy and everything's going down well, then rinse and repeat. Then if it isn't going down and you're not finding you're getting the results you want, then have a little discussion about how internally you can feel as though that can be boosted.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. I'd say that if you want to track it, measure it, make sure it's not just a logo on something. There's a QR code there. There's a link to a website. Maximize what you're doing with the information you have, because that's the only way of knowing how to measure it's working or not. And we reorder. We don't order a lot. We could to save cost, but again, this is the first year where we've done 12 showcase events. Last year we only did 4 or 5. So we'll learn to see what products went out well, which products haven't, which are slow giveaways, which are better giveaways, what feedback do people get. To be honest with you, our best giveaway, and sorry, James, is our cupcakes that we bring with us.
I can't deny that will be the case.
That is a good hook
it really
to a
is.
stand.
They're
and a big
huge.
shout out to Jody from Jody Bakes for that one. So, but do something that's memorable, do something that, you can measure and there's a strategy to it and you can measure it afterwards. No point ordering a load of stock and leaving the box in a room, because then you're going to have a negative view on it. Make sure that if you bring it in, there's a purpose of bringing it in. Don't bring in a lot, bring in a few, send it out, make sure you follow up on it, and then you'll know what's working, which is why it has been. So that brings us to the end of this episode. I want to thank you, James, for joining us.
Wow, thank you for inviting me and thank you for the chat.
No, it's been absolutely incredible, very, very insightful. And I want to, before I go, remind everyone, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to click on the subscribe and the bell notification button. Don't forget to reach out to us using the @Bobble Digital username and using hashtags, hashtag Mr. Bobble, hashtag Ask Bobble, hashtag BobblePod. And we'll see you on our next episode. Thank you very much.
Thank you.